Welcome to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista, where we chat with industry leaders and get their take on the challenges facing the market. And maybe we'll have a little fun along the way. On this week's episode of the Marketing Stir, Ajay and Vincent are joined by Greg Macias, Director of Brand at Yamaha Music, to discuss how they reach modern musicians and how Macias measures and improves brand recognition at Yamaha. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stirista's The Marketing Stir. I am your happy host with some bright colors on today if you're watching us. Again, I'm Vincent Petrofessa, the Vice President of B2B Products here at Stirista, but one of your hosts of The Marketing Stir. Lots to talk about. What a brand do we have on today? But let's pause and talk about Stirista just for a few seconds. That's it. It's the only advertising we take. It's just me talking about my company. We are a marketing technology company. We own our own business-to-business, business-to-consumer data. Also the technology to push out to that data to help you get new customers. Email me at vincent@stirista.com. That is how confident I am. I just gave all of you my email address. And boy, are you using it. Is it always for the reason I intend? Nope, but you're listening. You know who also listens to me every once in a while? My co-host, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're watching on video. You got to see this guy. He looks 10 years younger. He shaved his beard. It's getting hot out there in Texas. It's hot here in New York. But, ladies and gentlemen, a real marketing rabble-rouser, as I like to call him, Mr. Ajay Gupta. What's going on, Ajay?
Hey, Vincent. It might be the first time we're doing a podcast where it's hotter in New York than San Antonio, right?
Yes, it is ridiculous. And I was just telling our amazing guest coming up who he's like, well, the weather here is perfect all year round. But for us, it's not like this. It is like New York City. It's crazy. But I still had to bring my energy. I still had to bring a bright shirt for the crowd because he's a fun guy. Wait till you meet him. But AJ, good stuff. Well, we are coming off of a couple weeks hanging out. You were in New York. We had a great event. We went to go see the New York Mets, my favorite baseball team, along with some other amazing clients of ours and prospects and people just discovering Stirista for the first time. But yeah, you were here in New York.
Yeah, I've been going through a liver detox since the Mets game and the rum bar in particular. I don't think I've had rum straight before like that. It was a very entertaining night with our clients.
It was called Rum House, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that either, where they're like, oh, we have a fine rum for you. I was like, what do you mean? Just like Malibu to put it in a drink? No, like rum. It was delicious. So it was a really good time. You know, New York City loves when AJ comes into town. That's one of your go-tos, but it might be September before he comes back, ladies and gentlemen. Might be a long time. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe August, but yeah, it's going to be a little while. But yeah, I think I know Midtown better than you do at this point.
Well, that's not a brag because that's Times Square, and a lot of people who live in New York City are like, get me away from this place. But you revel in it. You love it. It is a fun time. But AJ, I'm glad that we are back together. What an episode, ladies and gentlemen. We have and this brand, one of our producers, Adam, who is a musician, he's like, oh, I know Yamaha. And then another one was like, oh, I know for the motorsports, and I know this. And it's both of those. We're going to get into that, right? That's one of the things we're going to get into. But I love this next guest, one of those guests that I say where I feel like I know this guy. This is me and this guy would have hung out in high school, you know, but he is awesome. He's the director of brand for Yamaha. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome. Greg Macias. What's going on, Greg?
Hey, Vincent. Hi, AJ. How you doing?
We're doing well. Awesome. Did you see how young my CEO looks today, Greg?
No, he is. He's preparing for the heat, shedding the layers.
Well, Greg, it's so nice to talk to you again. And Greg, so what I was saying, kind of true, right? Where Yamaha, a lot of, two separate companies, right? We'll get into that, but too well known. So talk to us about that a little bit, right? Talk to us about your role within Yamaha. What area do you sit on? Some of the day to day, but also that dispel that, right? The two companies.
So Yamaha was originally founded in 1887, and the first product was in Oregon. So quite a while ago, 138 years ago. And the company grew up, so to speak, making musical instruments, and did that for many many years, all the way up until 1955, when they decided that they had the technology, the equipment, the manufacturing expertise, and they decided to go into the motorcycle market. So Yamaha Motors was immediately established as a separate entity, although it was founded by the music business, which had already been in existence for about 70 years. And they immediately kind of spun off the motors division, and to this day they're run as two separate companies. We do consider ourselves sister companies, although there is a global CEO for Yamaha Motors and a separate global CEO for Yamaha Music. Yeah, and that's kind of the way it works today. And both companies are phenomenal. Both companies, offer a wide array of products and services. And Yamaha Motors is, it's pretty amazing in itself, because it does so much more than motorcycles now, as you may or may not know. They even do things like robotics and medical equipment. So it's grown quite a bit since its motorcycle days.
Mm. And your part, Greg, now you're part of the music side. And talk to us about that, where, some of your day to day, with that role there, that brand. And then, kind of my other question that we ask all of our guests: how do you get started in marketing? Right. So, what you're currently kind of doing, and then how you got started.
Yeah, so my title is the director of brand, and specifically my responsibility is the U.S. But my job is to continually improve the reputation of the company, specifically in the United States. But we work very regularly, with our global partners and other partners around the world. But again, my job is to improve the reputation. As you can imagine, that involves a lot of things. There's a lot of tasks. There's a lot of touch points. We're establishing annual goals and strategies, of which we kind of go after that and say, how do we do that? So again, we're constantly trying to improve our reputation.
Greg, has it been like for you personally, from transitioning from sports and lifestyle brands like Quicksilver into a more music-centered company?
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I think there's similarities and differences. So, like sports, playing music, it's both a profession and a pastime. But also, like sports, people spend a considerable amount of time doing it, right? The temptation, in a music centered company, is to tell people about the tools, meaning the instruments and the gear, right? And we do that because we're constantly introducing new products and services into the market. But I do believe that music is a lifestyle choice as well, and there's an opportunity, to tell a story around people and culture, right? So stories get people to feel, and that emotion drives a lot of choices. So like my time at the lifestyle companies where we were storytelling, we're also doing the same thing here. So I would say there's more similarities than differences.
And what lessons have you brought over that still guide you today at Yamaha?
So at Quicksilver, one of the takeaways that I learned from there was to really find ways to add to the culture of your market, right? To improve it. So, sometimes that takes the form of a person, an athlete, a creator. Sometimes it takes the format of an event, or it could be, something as simple as a party. There's really no rules. I think our customers, they have a short memory for our product offerings sometimes, but they will remember that we supported, a world champion, or we produced a highly unique event. And that was one of my big takeaways from Quicksilver, and one of the things I think that we executed well at that company. ASICS is a lot like Yamaha structurally. They were also similar in that they had tremendous pride in design, engineering, and craftsmanship. So Yamaha Music is like that. There's a lot of pride in design, engineering, and craftsmanship of the products and services. And ASICS was a lot like that as well. They designed and marketed some of the best athletic sports gear, especially footwear, in the world. And the shoe designers had an almost heroic reputation, as they went through great lengths to to comprehend what it took to get better and faster. So the lesson there is that you can be culture driven or product driven, and you have to know where your strengths lie and how your customer considers your offering a positive part of their life.
And Greg, speaking about customers, I want to say, like, how do you define brand in an age where audiences are really fragmented across many platforms?
Yeah, I mean, for me, defining brand is I keep it really simple. And I know there's a lot of definitions of brand out there. You can get on YouTube or the internet or AI, and you'll get 50 definitions of brand. And it's not like any of them are right or any of them are wrong. For me, operationally, and because it's my profession, I try to keep it really simple. To me, brand is the reputation of your company or your entity, right? Sometimes brands are people in an individual's mind, and I'm really specific about that word because I think the reputation of Tesla in one person's mind might be good, and in another person's mind it might not be as good, right? It's that reputation in that individual's mind of that entity. That's how I define it, and that's how I apply it. As I kind of go about my day to day.
No, I love that. And I remember, you and I talking, and I love the way you defined brand. It was, very different from what I've heard before. Greg, talk to us about, like we were talking earlier, one of my producers is a musician, right? How, and what do you think the musician wants today? And how do you shape your strategy around that? I think the way music and musicians are really different today. I remember back in my day, it's like premiering on MTV or Leno or Carson. Now it's like everywhere. You can really make it. So, like, how do you know cater to that?
I think at the basis of it, musicians have wanted the same thing for years, right? They want to progress. They want to get better at their art. They want to express themselves, and they really want to connect with people, right? That's why they express themselves. Is they really want to connect. As for what they want in contemporary times, I think we're at an interesting crossroad, right? So, how easy do you make it for people to express themselves through this art versus the satisfaction of working at the art and having the psychological payoff that they created something, right? We all know that AI can pump out a song in 10 seconds. There's apps out there that you can put a prompt in and it'll push out a song, if you will, in a record amount of time. But, we believe there's still a significant percentage of the population that still wants to climb the mountain, as it were, right? And we're committed to helping them achieve that, right? So the truth is, you can go from point A to point B in a car in contemporary times, right? But there's still a lot of people that want to ride a bike. There's a lot of merit to that. There's a lot of satisfaction in that. There's a lot of health and psychological payoff in that. So even though AI is coming in and it is part of our business too, we want to introduce people and we want to make music accessible. We also think that a lot of people still want to climb that mountain and perform that art themselves and not rely on a machine to do it.
Greg, I know Yamaha has such great products. Is there one that you particularly like or are obsessed with?
Yeah, I I love that question, AJ. It actually it changes because I'm a kid in a candy store. I'm going to be honest, and Yamaha's a candy store if you're a musician, right? There's always a new product coming out. There's some products that were here when I started working for the company, and I'm still discovering. But the one at the moment, it's called the Trans Acoustic, and it's really interesting because it's an acoustic guitar, right? It's still made out of woods, but it has some circuitry on the inside. It's not plugged into a wall, it's not plugged into an amp, but it uses the body of the guitar to produce sound and to amplify sound. And it's really an amazing thing, right? So you can kind of be, around a fire in front of your friends, busking out in the street. And without plugging in or amplifying it, you're going to get different sounds and resonance from the guitar. The most recent thing that was put into it was a looping mechanism as well. So you can actually tap the body of the guitar and you can play, a melody and then tap it again and it'll loop that melody and then you can go on and play something else. So, again, if if you're not with a big band, if you're just performing alone, those types of things they're really amazing. And I just think it's fun.
So for a brand like Yamaha, so well known, everybody loves the brand, how do you measure uh, in a way that's kind of useful to you how much what the brand recognition is, how much people love the brand?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not everybody loves Yamaha for the same reasons, right? And not everybody loves us to the same degree, right? And we know that because we ask a lot of questions constantly. So we dig deeper in our inquiries to comprehend the reasons and the percentages, right? So some love us for quality, some love us for craftsmanship, and I separate those two things. Some love us for our philosophical approach, right? We're a very harmony driven company. And some, like us for service and so on. So there's many reasons why people have an emotion toward this brand. So, and we apply that knowledge to different initiatives in different ways to determine what we keep doing, what we stop doing, and what we need to do that we may not already be doing in order to continue to earn that affection.
Well, yeah, and what you're talking about, I remember when, like I said, one of our producers, Adam, was like, my grandmother had a Yamaha piano, and it meant so much to me, and it really, it invoked a memory. And like you said, you're playing into that. I'd love to talk to you about, because this is something I love. B2B is in my title, where there is a consumer aspect of Yamaha, of course, but also a business to business aspect, Greg, where schools, audio tech, what's that like? Are you responsible for that as well? And how are you changing your marketing accordingly?
We have people dedicated, to verticals like education, right? So, there are groups here, right? It's a, I would call us a mid-sized, maybe to larger company. And the good news is we have people that focus on different areas, right? There's some that focus on education. There's some that focus on professional audio. There's some that focus on home audio. And because of that, we're on a product and a product category level, we're able to understand the market, understand the segment, understand the different types of distribution, understand the customer, in very specific ways, right? So marketing wise, we focus on these unique markets. Brand wise, we share a common communicated philosophy, right? That's something that is an umbrella across no matter what our offering is. What we say is we help our customers make waves, right? That's our brand promise. And it really means, and I think I said this earlier, what it really means to help them make waves is we help them progress, express, and connect through music and sound. And so that's how we go about a very broad music and sound market, practically, but also emotionally. Its philosophy is what pulls it together.
And what are some of your strategies as well, Greg, for getting in front of? You see a lot of, music influencers, getting into these schools, right? Getting ahead of that and driving that message. What's some of your strategies there?
Yeah, I mean, once again, we have people that are dedicated to the school music business. And also, we have a very strong, as you can imagine, we have a very strong presence in public and private school music programs, including our own Yamaha schools. So we're out there introducing the brand to young musicians at an early age, right? There's a lot of, in our research, as we're interviewing people and we're asking them questions, there's a lot of people that have very fond memories about a Yamaha instrument being their first instrument and their first music experience being a school music program where Yamaha was introduced. So I think that actually, it actually gives us a bit of an advantage because many times, their experience with music and their experience with a musical instrument is Yamaha because of our presence in those programs. And also, kind of part and parcel of that is we specifically make beginner instruments in some categories. So we might make a guitar that's easier, with the fingering and the frets and the strings and all of that and the body size. So we do make specifically beginner instruments, even though we make it for the professional at the highest level that may play in an orchestra or a popular music brand. We also make it for kids that are just getting started out, where many of those motions and movements are very tough. So yeah, we're in it early through public and private school music programs. The other question you asked about was influencers. That's more of a contemporary kind of approach. And, you know, there's nothing fancy about our interaction with them. We just invite them. We try to see who's out there, who's influential, who's talking about what category of music or sound. And, we will invite them to our events. We will invite them, to contribute to our social channels, and we collaborate with them, and it's actually very simple. And because we're one of the leading music instrument and sound companies, they're typically interested in working with us.
Greg, we've talked a lot about kind of how different people look at the brand differently and have different feelings it evokes. How do you, from a kind of a marketing perspective, keep things cohesive where the messaging, what do you do to keep that messaging cohesive where it sounds like it's one big brand?
It's always a challenge when you have the scope of product and service offering that we do, right? Some of our competitors are hyper focused in one category, right? And we know that. And they do a good job. They're significant competitors out there. And, we offer a lot of products and a lot of services across a lot of music and sound applications. But the way that we hold it together, on the surface, it's really visual and tonal consistency. We have a visual guide. We follow that very closely when we're creating new campaigns. So, one day we may be briefing in a campaign, to introduce a new high-end trumpet. And the next day we may be doing a music school program. But our visual and tonal consistency are there through all of it. And we do try to use that to pull us together so that when we are introducing something new, it's Yamaha. And then philosophically, we communicate a singular purpose, right? Which is, again, I'm going to go back to make waves, right? Because make waves is our articulation of what we call our brand promise, right? And again, it just means we're helping people progress, express, and connect through music and sound. It's very simple philosophical progression, right? We're Yamaha. We don't make music. We make tools that help people make music, right? We help the artists, and that's our mission.
So the next one is a fun question that we ask all of our guests. A lot of them are, specific to you, but this one we ask everybody. I'm sure you get a lot of LinkedIn messages that are unsolicited. So what's a message that gets a response from you, but more importantly, what's one that really annoys you?
There are a lot of people that reach out, as you can imagine, for partnership and sponsorship and charity. We try to respond to all of them. The ones that get my attention are when they're truly unique, simply because it involves music or sound, typically isn't a differentiator. But if there is something unique about their project, that's what catches our attention. Other than the volume, I don't really hate anything other than it's work. It's a lot of volume that comes through that channel. Yeah.
It's a new, first time I've seen this question. I love it. What's a gut instinct that you've had, could be business wise, personal wise, that you've always trusted over the years?
I would say believe in people, especially the people you're with at the moment. Companies are groups of people. And the reason they're successful is because of that chemistry, right? And I think there's a temptation to highlight ingredients in the recipe. But, if you're a sports fan, you know that the recipe matters. It's how those people combined. And sometimes it's tough to trust the people that are sitting right next to you, right? Because you have your own thoughts and feelings and, emotions about how to get things done, or maybe something formulaic that happened in your past and you want to carry it forward, right? But every day is a new day. Every environment is constantly challenging. And if you don't trust the people that you're with, even if sometimes you handpick them, sometimes you're put in a room because someone else hired them into your fold, is make the best out of that, and give trust before you get the trust. And I think most of the time good things come out of that, and positive things come out of that, and especially in marketing, which is it changes daily, right? Like it's every year is different, and every environment is different. And even though we're always trying to apply formulas, the truth is we have to be smarter than the moment that we're in, and we have to experiment with things and trust the people that are next to you.
I love it. I love it. That's, inaugural question. We might have to include that in every episode, but it started here with Greg. I love that, Greg. Greg, what are some hobbies you like to do, right? Were you always in the California area? Tell us about yourself, your weekends. What do you like to do?
Yeah, thanks. It's such a fun question, right? To talk about yourself. Yeah, I grew up here in Southern California. I'm the product of 12 years of Catholic school, and I went to Catholic grade school, a Catholic high school. I've always been active, and I grew up, playing sports, and I married a physical therapist, and she's very active. It's kind of interesting. I have a really good college buddy, and we had this thing we invented called SRG, and SRG meant surf, run, guitar. And what we do is on Saturdays or Sundays when we had ample time, is we try to do all three of those things in succession. We try to go surfing for an hour or two, and then we try to go on a run, and then we'd sit down and we'd play guitar. And it was just so much fun. And we've done it for over 30 years now. What's interesting about that is those are the companies that I worked for. I, I worked for a surfing company at Quicksilver. That was much wider than surfing, but it was centered around surfing. I worked for ASICS, which is very well known in the running space, longtime sponsor of the New York City Marathon. And now I work for Yamaha, and I love music like most people do. And I just happen in my history to play a couple of instruments, and it's just so fulfilling and so motivating on a daily basis to have the privilege to work on companies that help people do these things that I would do anyway for fun, even if I was working at an accounting firm, right?
I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, wait a minute, Quicksilver, A6, and now Yamaha. That is awesome. Greg, what a great way to end the podcast. It's been a pleasure talking to you, sir.
You too. Thank you.
Yeah, you've been awesome. Well, thanks for sharing your story, not only from Yamaha, but your career. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Greg Macias. He is the director of brand at Yamaha. Go check out Yamaha, right? Now you'll start discovering it all over. You'll see musical instruments. Get back into it. Discover Yamaha. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of The Marketing Stir. That's Greg Macias. That is cleanly shaved AJ Gupta. I'm Vincent Petrofessa. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Stir podcast by Stirista. Please like and subscribe. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, please email us at themarketingstir@stirista.com.